Just to take the big picture again, let's not get lost in trivialities. The Gita vouches that from the beginning till the end, you are only the self in you. If you look at the screen, and I urge some of you have joined from the phone, if possible, look at the screen or join through your computer. But because the next 20-30 minutes are going to be interpreting this diagram. From the beginning till the end, you are but the self in you, which is pure consciousness. Pure consciousness meaning there is no conditionality or adulteration into it. When consciousness becomes Aditya, it's conditional to Aditya's personality. But consciousness before the before the mind came into picture is pure consciousness. That alone is, but that cannot be experienced. Just like transparent water cannot be seen. The moment you add ink to it, you can see it. If you look at a transparent, truly clear water, you don't know whether it exists or not in the vessel. All you can see is the vessel. But if you add adulteration to it, then you can experience it. Similarly, pureness cannot be experienced. There is no one to experience it. The moment there is someone to experience it, that has already made it adulterated. So that's the small I on the right side, is conditioned consciousness. Now, where does conditioned consciousness come in? How does it come in? Because of the veil of ignorance. Ignorance of true nature creates conditional nature. We live our life through conditional consciousness. But in and through all this, we are the self in us. And that dotted line that you see there is the ignorance of the self. So, one important takeaway here from a Vedantic academic point of view: what creates conditional consciousness? You may be tempted to say that the self creates the world, the self creates the I. No, the self does not create, because when you say the self creates, it attributes desire to the self. The self has no desire, alone is. It is not the self that creates anything. It's ignorance that creates the world, not self. Did the road create the mirage? The road had nothing to do. It's ignorance of the road that appears as a mirage. Did the rope create the snake? The rope had got nothing to do. It's ignorance of your rope that created the snake, right? So that's the logic there. So it's a little more profound than the rope, snake, or road. But self does not create. So that itself is the difference between God and self. Anyway, that's not the purpose for today anyway, but that we got to come from the top. Now, let's talk about the right hand side, because we're getting into chapter 16, right? Next click. Now, this conditioned consciousness comes in various qualities or natures. It is, we all oscillate amongst two extremes, which is like a spiral. On the left is the best in us, where the conditioned consciousness is not conditioned to a point of fault, where we're still light, we're still open to change. We're not fabricated to a point of no return. So that's a path of knowledge where you're slowly being more detached and having a looser grip on this conditionality that's holding you back. It's like the Matrix movie, isn't it? The more you are into Matrix, the more difficult it is to come out of Matrix. So on the left is the what we call path of knowledge. Just means that you are able to exhibit control over yourself. You can exhibit free will more easily. The path of ignorance on the right means you've got too invested into ignorance and the world that you live in, the samsara, the nama rupa, that now you struggle to get out of it. You have no control over yourself. You are in bondage, right? And we find, just like the preamble to this class where we said these are not two different kind of people, it's both you. At your best, you find yourself on the left, isn't it? At your best, you find yourself having complete control over your life, your mind, your choices, your happiness. At your worst, you find yourself a victim to the whims and fancies of others, the world. You know what is right, but you're not able to exercise it. You know you need to say the truth, but you slip into lying. You know you want to quit that habit, but the habit is controlling you at the moment. Everything is topsy turvy. So, so the extent to which you're embedded in conditionality determines the extent to which you traverse between the in the spiral. The more the more parts of your life you take it to the left, the more overall control you have about all your life, whether it be work, whether it be play, whether it be spiritual, emotional, mental, whatever. And this doesn't talk about particular activities because those are defined by us and legal systems and stuff. This is defined by state of mind, sir. This is defined as experience of life. The path of ignorance may be seemingly happy, but your experience of life is pathetic. The path of knowledge, you may be seemingly poor, but your experience of life is great. So it's not about activities that the world defines as good or bad in 2021. It's about your experience of life, right? So let's proceed. In our terms, in terms of gunas that we have seen, the part in you or people who have a greater choice in the overall scheme of things are people who have what we call as sattvic qualities in them. Sattva means the ability to remain detached to most things in life. Sattva means the ability to absorb knowledge better. Sattva means having a looser grip on desires. Sattva means light. Sattva means all of that. So the greater the sattva qualities in you, you spiral more towards the path of knowledge. You gain control over your life. You establish the right hierarchy. Your intellect directs your mind, and your mind directs your sense organs. The sense organs direct the sense objects. See, the hierarchy is established. It's like the CEO controlling the senior team controlling the middle management controlling the frontline workers. The hierarchy is established. When you spiral both ways, you go through rajas. Rajas is you get attached and bound to things. So you go to rajas, and then rajas, when you cash in on rajas, you get complacent. You go to tamas, and here you find more towards the right. When you spiral, the hierarchy is distorted. Your mind is in control. There's no intellect present there. Intellect is like a muscle. It doesn't come intact. It needs to be built. We all have a propensity for intellect. It doesn't come off the shelf. We have to go to the gym to build intellect. But mind comes off the shelf because mind is a carry forward from the residue where you ended your last projection, so to speak, or your last night. You don't need to talk about projections, too confusing. So you got up today both as a victim and beneficiary of your own mind of last night. So your mind is a given. You don't need to work to get the mind that you have. But intellect is not a given. It needs to be built as a muscle. So the more you spiral towards the right, the more the hierarchy is topsy-turvy. The mind controls our sense organs, which means our sense organs are like the inmates ruling the asylum. The sense organs go astray, and therefore the sense objects are. We normally blame the sense objects, but it's the mind that needs to be blamed. But that's tamasic, obstinate, and no control, meaning happily ignorant. No knowledge speaks. We've seen all of this. Now the point of this slide is coming just now. Next click. So this is like an infinity loop, sir. For those of you who are seeing the screen, this path of knowledge of complete control to path of ignorance, it's not dividing 8 billion people into this continuum of complete control to no control, complete reception to no reception. No, it is dividing you, your own personality. We all spiral between sattva, rajas, tamas all our lives and between lives, though we all have a dominant nature at the moment. But dominant nature at the moment is not an assurance for the future. You see that little ball there, the orange ball. You may be between sattva and rajas now, which means that your dominance is rajas, but tending towards sattva because you're attending these classes, you're interested in knowledge, you have a thirst for growth. Spirituality speaks to you. You find the best in you come out more often than the worst in you. Congratulations. That is not a license for you to become complacent about it because it's an infinity loop. Why is it an infinity loop? I want to ask this question. So you gave health as an example. Let's just continue with that. So, so, so when we are overweight, or when the doctor says, "Listen, your heart has done its job. Now you do your job to your heart. Go walk or run or exercise." Then we suddenly get that passion because we all want to live. So we run into rajas. So we try to exercise. We try to do something. And later we lose 10 kilograms. We shed off that weight, and our arteries are better. The body is able to carry better. At that time, what happens, sir? Now you have pity that you've worked hard so much. Cheat days. It looks so sattvic, isn't it? People working out 6 days, but the cheat day, because the desire for the self, I mean, desire for yourself is so strong that in that fitness that you have developed also lies the self pity that when do I cash in on this hard work? So once you get fit, what happens? To stay fit is difficult. I mean, you may stay fit, but what do you also end up cashing in on it, and cashing it again spirals you back to tamas, and then your passion gets triggered, and then go back to rajas and you reach sattva, but you don't stay at sattva. The point is, if you look at this graph, assuming we are passionate rajasic, most of us are dominant on rajas, and rajas is a good thing to have. It triggers us to all passions, including good passions. So but we all cash in on rajas, meaning the passion stops and laziness creeps in, isn't it? So for example, you worked your life to get to a stage where you are today. People say, I want to retire and do nothing. So, rajas, that passion not always remains as passion. It becomes tamas. Some of you are, for example, Toastmasters here. First 3 4 years, you really worked hard in Toastmasters. You've done speeches. You've run to many clubs. You've become dual members. You've taken in any role, timer, R counter, grammarian. But now you don't do that. You want to rely on past glory. You want to say, I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. I can't take timer role now. It's beneath my dignity. I want to be area director, whatever, or you may be part of Rotary. It's all the same. So you cash in on Rajas fast and get into Tamas. Now, what's been your incremental learning in Toastmasters the last 2 years? Zero. But you're cashing in on past work, so people still admire you, etc., etc. You haven't really progressed. Like I just posted on LinkedIn 2 days ago my experience in a coaching. I was coaching a CFO of a Fortune FTSE 100 company here in the UK. Coaching on something else, on strategy or something. It's a global FMCG firm. Um, we were talking about how there's no point being asset heavy, you need to be capability heavy. So the organization was owning assets. Now it doesn't know what to do with those assets. We were thinking of how by 2023 Your assets are not going to take you anywhere. You need to be nimble to plug in capabilities from the ecosystem and plug out of it, just like a USB to a computer. So that was what we were discussing. And then he was saying that he's not progressing fast enough in his career. He's the business CEO, but he wants to be the group CEO of the entire conglomerate. And he was experienced enough. He has 25 years job experience. So then he had a stark realization that he progressed so fast to become a CFO by age of 37 or something. That was 6 years ago or something. He became the CFO because of insane amount of passion he had in the first 10 years of his career. He used to learn more. He used to go meet his business leaders often. He used to read. He used to attend CFO conferences. He used to stay updated. He used to revise after his doing his CA. It doesn't mean that his job is done. He used to revise, adapt himself to the latest and greatest in the accounting world, financial world, auditing world. But in the last 5 years, he's relied on that reputation to keep him going. The first 10 years, he relied on hard work to get promoted. But then he built a reputation, a good reputation. Now he is relying on that reputation to get promoted. So he's got tamasic, isn't it? Rajas always leads to complacency. And you cash in on the fruits of Rajas, and that spirals into tamas. It's a obvious deterioration. It's entropy. Just like a room can only get more dirty, the room cannot automatically get cleaned. Cleaning requires intervention. Getting dirty does not require an intervention. Similarly, Rajas spiraling to Tamas is obvious. It's not it's not an if, it's a when. But you may say, Aditya, in this particular habit, I continue to be Rajasic. Good. But find out areas where you become Tamasic. If each of us have different dominance in this diagram. Rajas Tamas equation. Now, the interesting bit here is you can never say stay in tamas throughout as well. It's an infinity loop. It's not a you keep going to the right, you go hit bare bottom, rock bottom. What happens? You will bounce back. Why? Because that desire is still there. Like desire to live is there, no? You've got into tamas in say our health, we've got into because of our own tamas, obstinance, laziness. uh, we've made ourselves 15 kgs overweight, or we've got ourselves into bad health mentally or physically because of our inability to control our mind. We are in depression. So the rock bottom of depression, what happens? You will take decisions of letting go of some toxicity in your life, or decision of exercising, decision of something. So the stomach, when it has no other choice, or when it has a jolt, it kind of bounces back most of the time and gets back to Rajas. You get back to some action, isn't it? And then what happens when you get back to that action? You suddenly see a sense of urgency there. You see, wow, why haven't I not done it earlier? I had this some a few months ago. I started investing in eToro. eToro is a interesting platform. You can invest on cryptocurrency, and you can invest on what are all assets. You can invest on commodities, in this index, crypto, stocks, ETFs, name it. For the international market, which includes the American market, the UK market, um, and Chinese market, international market. So I've been exploring and reading more about how the crypto world works, bitcoins, ADA, Ethereum. Some of you who if you're interested in the crypto world, or how the stock market, uh, uh, the renewable energy sector, or the semiconductor sector, or the EV sector, or the big techs. Uh, these are good ETFs to consider because the the alpha above the index that it offers you is at least 5 or 10%. And then when you let it uh, take its own course with the power of compounding, it multiplies. Your money makes money, basically. But anyway, so so I've always been an investor, but I've always been the lazy one, which is okay, put my money in some mutual funds in India, or just keep it in some FD in India, or probably buy some stuff. I've never a bad investor, but no, I could have done better. I've been hiding behind the fact that I'm busy at work, which I am. Been hiding behind the fact that I'm actually passionate about other things, not so much about finance and managing wealth. I've been hiding behind the fact that all this is shallow stuff. You know, it's okay. I have enough money. I earn pretty well. So why? See, all those are tamasic behaviors, because it doesn't mean that everybody should be greedy to make money. That's not the point. The point is the reason that you hide behind stuff is tamasic. Because if you are having an intellect, you do what needs to be done. You will not have 50 lakh rupees in your savings bank account, sir. That's the point. For 2.5% interest. Whatever said and done, that is tamasic. Either give that to charity, or you will find a way to invest it better. Because even if you are charitable, you want that 50 lakhs to become 70 lakhs soon, so that you can give the 20 lakhs to charity. No, that 50 lakhs stays under your pillow. That is tamasic. So in my example, I'm saying, so the last few months I've been trying to get out of that. There will be a point it bounces to rajas. Why? Because if I see some of my colleagues who have a very similar earning capacity to me, and I see how the power of compounding helps them, and how the same net worth is doubled, but mine's become 1.2, theirs become 2 times, there will be a jolt into action for all of us, even in tamas. Sometimes it could be because of the missed opportunity you realize, or sometimes it could be you just do a trial and error and you fall in love with something, and then you realize, oh God, I haven't done this for ages. That's why the starting trouble. The Nobody ever after a 10-kilometer run has ever repented waking up and running. Before going for the run, our mind gives us 50,000 reasons to not do it. Nobody, without exception, and if there is exception, I apologize in advance, but I'm sure there is no exception. If there is, please unmute yourself and tell me. After waking up at whatever, it's not about the time. After doing a 6-kilometer jog, nobody has ever said, oh, I wish I didn't do that. In fact, after doing it for a couple of days, even the most tamasic person says, I have realized this new aspect of life that I've been stupidly unaware of. Oh my goodness. The thing is, you can easily spiral into rajas at some point in time. It's not, tamas does not always breed tamas. Tamas breeds tamas till a point where you eventually bounce back, because it's infinity loop. It's not a flat earth theory that there's a flat, it's an infinity. Then what happens? We stop in rajas. Rajas tamas can itself be a spiral, one half of that infinity loop. But to move beyond rajas requires self effort. It is not it's against law of nature, because it takes more brain energy. The brain is 2 or 3% of your body weight is your brain weight, the head weight or brain weight. But it consumes 25% of all energy produced by the body, which means evolutionarily your brain is designed to conserve its own energy. So anything that requires self effort, it first tries a way to not do it. It requires extreme willpower to put in self effort. That's why we know a lot of things, but we seldom follow it ourselves, because knowing doesn't require brain energy. Following requires brain energy. We don't like to put in brain energy. We're not designed to put in brain energy, because our brain is conserving its energy all the time. Your brain requires firstly energy to operate the body. Without your brain energy, how can you How can the nervous system function? How can the all these bodily homeostasis functions? Brain is required. How can the oxygen supply be regulated? How can your liver do what it needs to do? How can the blood cell? Your brain is first designed to support your body, not your abstract poetry. Why do people who go into the hospital with a particular organ at fault, even during the COVID-19, when the lungs have got deteriorated because of the COVID virus, some people die in multi-organ failure. Why has multi-organ failure got to do with this? The reason is because when one part of your body is totally incapacitated, your body has this natural habit of calling in help from other parts of the body. I'm saying it in very layman terms, because I am a layman in the subject. Your body calls for help from all the other parts of the body. So when so all the other parts of the body are put on super saver mode, battery mode, saving whatever, power saving mode. So the body supplies only the bare essentials to every other organ in your body, so that all those warriors go into the lungs to protect the lungs. The lungs require help. Since the body operates in bare minimum mode, it is basically reduced its immunity. So your kidneys are more susceptible than they are usually. Your liver is more susceptible than it is usually. Your all parts of your body are more susceptible. Your nervous systems, because your body is focused on one area which requires help. Just like your army is spread throughout the country, but if there is a terrorist attack at one point in the country, 10,000 soldiers are called to that particular small village. What does that mean? That means the rest of the country is susceptible, isn't it? The rest of the country is in power saving mode, which means you obviously station a few officers, but you call everybody to duty. Similarly, similarly, your 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 brain is working like that. Your brain is working to help processes. Where will the brain have energy to go beyond all these necessities and help you in your self effort? It is highly difficult, highly difficult. That's why when Vivekananda says, go first take care of your body, he's saying, because without the able body, where do you have brain energy to take care of your emotional, mental, intellectual, spiritual self? Brain is busy with taking care of keeping you afloat while we are screwing ourselves up. Your brain is busy taking care of it. So rajas to sattva requires self effort. It requires harnessing energy. It requires a plan. It requires a path. It requires a guru, a teacher. It requires the TTT. What is TTT? Text, tuition, and teacher. It requires a text, meaning it requires a planned sequential order of grabbing knowledge. It's not random. One day I read a self-help book, nothing happens. It's it's romantic, it's nice, it's beautiful. Some person makes money with the promise of your transformation, nothing happens. How many motivational speeches you've listened to, sir? What's been the traction? Very minimal, isn't it? How many lectures have you listened on leadership skills? What's been the traction? You still get angry with what you get angry. You still are beautiful where you are beautiful. So no traction. So first it requires text. Self effort requires text, means it requires a more programmed approach, not a random, sporadic, ad hoc approach. It requires tuition, meaning it requires a particular path with checkpoints. It's a journey where the tuition ensures that you are being guided along a tested path where where your chances of success are maximized. That's why you go to tuition, isn't it? Why do you send your son to a math tuition? Because you realize that process of tuition is required to amplify what the school teacher in school teaches. You're putting yourself on more drugs, basically good drugs, as tuition. So that's as a tuition does. Your life itself can teach you, but If you put yourself in tuition, it just amplifies the impact, it accelerates the progress. And then teacher teacher is is somebody to hold a mirror, to say things as they are, whose job is not to please you, whose job is to communicate, whose job is not to tell, whose job is to show you who you are, say things which are not pleasing to the ear. The problem with us is we leave those teachers soon enough. We find teachers who say things we want to hear. So we don't get the TTT in life. We need to trust a teacher, but we need to also ensure that teacher says things as it is, not what we want to hear. It's lonely at the top, we say, isn't it, in leadership? When I work with CEOs, I truly find that it's lonely. The first 15 years of your life in your career, you get abundant and adequate feedback. At that time, we don't like hearing feedback. We like hearing only good things. When you reach the top, you look for feedback. You're ready to pay 1 crore to get feedback. But people are dishonest. You don't get proper feedback. That's the paradox of in your career. So leaders pay companies like mine a lot of money to sometimes do some 360-degree feedbacks on whether it be behavioral, whether it be strategy. They want to audit what is the organization telling, how are people feeling, how engaged are they, do they like me, I want feedback. And I'm tempted to say, why don't you go ask them? He says, no, if I ask them, they say everything is good. You, they've reached a point where even if they crack a bad joke, everybody around them laughs and says it's a fantastic joke. So they struggle. So they seek. When they had feedback, they never listened 15 years ago. So teacher is a person who needs to tell a person things as it is. So with all of that self effort, you move to sattva. You move to sattva, meaning you naturally let go of your attached passions. You naturally let go of jealousy, naturally let go of anger, naturally let go of possessiveness, naturally let go of self pity, naturally outgrow the toys and joys of life, naturally outgrow the craving for recognition. In that self effort, like sattva. Friends, I don't want to be controversial here, but in our WhatsApp chat group, I'm not going to take names here, but a wonderful friend of mine texted me in private saying, Aditya, I contribute so much, but you don't recognize my texts. I'm saying this because I've already discussed with that person. So they're aware of it. So that's not a problem. No privacy violations here. I would never share private conversations. So then I said, I'm sorry, my objective is not to recognize each of your reflections as good. That is just feeding into your ego of, oh, I made a point, I need to be recognized. Is that the reason you're sharing? I asked honestly. I said, please don't share if your objective is to wordsmith a beautiful answer and everybody goes ga. That's not the point of reflection on these groups. The point of reflection is for your own self, full stop. You don't need to share it on the group. The idea is to reflect. I'll be happy if you don't share, but you thought about it rather than wordsmith a good answer and your life being the same. So the point here is that sometimes whatever we do, we're doing it for recognition, isn't it? We're not doing it for its own sake. So it requires self effort for us to come out of that basic need from recognition. It's not wrong to need recognition, but that is holding us back even in learning, isn't it? Why is I've made such a good point, why is nobody acknowledging it? So from now on, I'm going to stop making that point. You're moving back to tamas, sir. You had that rajas to to put your 2 cents. But the attachment behind that, that need for recognition behind that, has spiraled you back to tamas. Now you say that this class doesn't deserve my 2 cents, my comments. Nobody ever deserved your two comments, sir. Sorry, the other way. Nobody ever cared about your two comments. Your two comments is for you. That's it, full stop. You share it with the class because it's a courtesy to give back, because you probably have learned from other people's opinions on that group. If you don't feel that as a courtesy, you don't need to. If you think it's a courtesy because you seem to be good in the subject, it is a natural courtesy. Where is the need for recognition there? Correct. To say thank you when your Amazon delivery guy comes and delivers is not a badge of honor. It is a courtesy you owe to a person who's traveling during COVID times to deliver your parcel. It is wrong for you to justify it by saying, but he's getting salary. No, no. You go do his job for 2 days. We cannot. We get bored even with well paying jobs. We cannot be an Amazon delivery guy. So saying thank you is a badge of, not a badge of, it's a courtesy. Similarly, we have something to share, we share. That's it. Where is there craving for? But there can be craving because we are caught in that trap. So our our sattva nature, which got us into a class like this, my rajasic nature to be very passionate about the subject, hits our personality and spirals into tamas again, saying for the next 3 months I have better things to do. And then you get guilty because you've been seeing updates but you've not made traction. So you come back, log into a particular class, something in that class triggers you, so you, the next week is nice, so you get into. So that's the spiral we get into. And then what's the last part of the spiral? See, all of this is my creation last night, huh? It's not the best representation, but it hopefully gives you a fair idea of how this chakra works. Then finally, once we get more sattvic, we don't stay sattvic, we cash in on it again. Cashing in doesn't require action. Cashing is an automated process, entropy. That's why if you see sattva to rajas and rajas to tamas is a simpler cashing in process. Tamas to rajas and rajas to sattva requires effort. You need to bounce back and there's self-effort required. So sattva cashing in means, for people who are highly sattvic, the world is a beautiful place. Imagine you've in the best of health, best of mental health, best of emotional health. You automatically cash in to your punyas. You start, and for example, you have such a charitable disposition, sattvic qualities. You see the world and you want to offer the world your help. It's a beautiful nature. So you start an NGO and you do well, and and so that NGO is being recognized by the country, and you call for awards, and you go get that award. Now you're called for an interview, go do that interview. The next 1 year gets spent in doing interviews and collecting awards. The NGO itself is doing average now. But now when you go back to the NGO stripped of all this, you feel you don't get the same joy there again, because now you're so used to the big lights of NDTVs and CNBCs of the world, the big lights of five-star hotels where you're dining with the ministers and who's who of the country. The purity of original intent is gone. You've gone back to rajas. Now when these awards and walking through the corridors of rich hotels don't stay forever, because you're not doing anything now to the NGO. So after it goes, you're neither here, so you go back to tamas. So many people we know are like that. And then you realize that I feel hollow. I got trapped into samsara. Let me go back and do something. You get back to rajas. So this cycle continues and on and on and on. So to complete this, so on the slide here you see, in colloquial terms, heaven and hell are not destinations that we reach after life. Heaven and hell are experiences of life depending on our own composition and where we are. So heaven is when you're in that part of life, or in that life or projection where you're the recipient of your own sattva qualities. Your experience of life is heavenly. So in Hindu philosophy or in Indian philosophy, heaven is not a destination which is permanent, or heaven is not in the sky out there. Heaven is life. There is only one truth which is life. There's only one truth which is this world. Heaven is your tempering or tampering it to a point of high return. The efficacy is high. Effort you put in is minimal, and the experience you get out of this is maximum. There is backing of the past. The momentum you've left your previous birth is so pristine that you wake up into this life not knowing who to thank for all the wonders life has given you: a great family, great health, great fitness, good looks, good bank balance, ease of which you're able to appreciate Vedanta, where you see other people in your family are not able to get it. You are able to get it. So that ease that life offers you is heaven, isn't it? You see the world, you're good, so you see the world as good. You're able to give people the benefit of doubt. Not everybody has that luxury, sir. Not everybody is able to give the benefit of doubt. Not everybody is able to exhibit empathy. You are able to exhibit empathy means you're in heaven. Why? Because if you are able to exhibit empathy, in that comes the inability to take suffering. The moment you empathize with the other person, how can you suffer because of that person's behavior? So your own temperament puts you in heaven. Sattva qualities comes with it a sovereign guarantee of heaven until sattva remains. And then on the other side, tamas comes with it a sovereign guarantee of hell. Hell is again experience of life. It's not some, when you explain it to children, we explain it, or when you explain it to, in a very religious way, we call it a place where you are burnt again and again, your skin is taken off, you're burnt again in fire. Who's have the fire? So there's nobody has all that fire. Hell is your own making of life is hell. That's how you feel. Metaphorically, we talk about fire and we talk about demons and stuff. Means what? You feel in fire all day. In tamas, you feel like that. You're obstinate, you're lustful. You are lustful, meaning you're not, lust does not just mean sexual lust. Lust here means you're greedy, you're lustful for everything. You're jealous. Has there ever been a person high on jealousy whose life experience has been great? You suffer every day. You suffer at your best friend's promotion. In the face value, you may say congratulations, but you're dying inside when other people succeed. You're dying inside when somebody makes money in the stock market. Your idea is not to say, oh, why am I tamasic that I didn't enter the stock market in time? In 2020 March, when the pandemic hit the world, stock market fell down, collapsed. Most stocks deteriorated over 50% of their value, but they were intrinsically valuable. Companies that fell down, like hospitality industry, airline industry, all industry, big tech, crypto, they didn't become invaluable. The intrinsic value was very strong, which means it was that current momentum of COVID that put the market at bay, at risk. Now, it is any intelligent person who's rajasic would have taken advantage of it. If you had free cash, if you didn't have free cash, it's fine. But if you had free cash, you should have put at least 10% of your savings. You should have, as they say, buy the dip. When the market dips, you have to buy. The market crescendos, you sell. That's basic law, right? So you know there is a dip. You know this happens once a decade. It happened during the financial crisis, where people who bought it 3 years later became millionaires. You know, if you buy enough in during the dip, you will become a millionaire. But we don't do it because we are in tamas. But life is all about spirituality. Who are you cheating? Ourselves. And now when we see people who invested 10,000 rupees last April, the 10,000 is 25,000 now. But if you add zeros, if you invested 10 lakhs, it's 25 lakhs now. If you invested 1 crore, it's 2.5 crores now. When we see those people, what do we think? We burn, isn't it? If you're tamasic, jealous, we all are to an extent. The first feeling is not spotting that it is our own tamas that led us to not play the situation right, to ride on the situation, giving unfair reasons like life is all about detachment. That doesn't mean you should not invest in stock market. But if life is all about detachment, you won't feel jealous now also, sir. The fact that you feel jealous now shows that that dialogue was just you used that dialogue because of tamas, not because of sattva. And so when you see the other person making hay, you feel jealous. So your life is hell, isn't it? When you see people rich around you, you have this burning sensation of jealousy, which is not wrong. Everybody has that. But it needs to be audited. It needs to be audited. So that is what we call hell. Hell is a condition that we create for ourselves because of the composition of our own mind. Now we straddle, oscillate between heaven and hell all our lives. Most of the time we don't reach heaven or hell. We are in that middle part, rajas, in most of the times. But we keep straddling between heaven and hell. So the scriptures say, when we reach heaven, heaven is not permanent. You cash in on heaven, because in heaven you kind of sit back relaxed with popcorn and enjoy the heaven, isn't it? If you go to Las Vegas with 1 lakh rupees and you start playing casinos, there will be a point when the bouncer throws you off, because only till you have that 1 lakh rupees are you respected there. Heaven has a high entry cost, and you've paid that entry cost with all your self effort. That's why you've got the ticket into heaven. But you're welcomed in heaven only till that ticket is expired, because you eating popcorn and enjoying the casino. So once you're out of money, you either have to deposit more money, but where will you have more money to deposit? You have to go through this infinity loop again to create that money to deposit, and then go back to sattva again, heaven. So which means you have to go back to rajas, you have to go back to sattva, and then you get entry ticket into heaven. Similarly to hell. So this oscillation is called samsara. Interesting, isn't it, how we've arrived at samsara today again? Whatever we come back to some similar words. So this oscillation is called samsara. Now, a couple of slides and then we close. When we are in the samsara, we have many questions. We have no access to answers. Remember, it's not that we don't have answers. In and through all of this, we are still the self. But we don't have access to those answers. Like questions such as, who created all this? Imagine when you're in the samsara. What the hell is all this? Who created all of this? When did it all begin? We have no idea. Time is infinite on both sides. Space is infinite on both sides. There's no first cause, last effect. Cause and effect is infinite. We're oscillating birth after birth, heaven after heaven, hell after hell. Who created all of this? When did it begin? What's the purpose? In ignorance, we arrogate ourselves into going into a laboratory and finding purpose of all of this. We arrogate ourselves just because we have records of fossil fuels. That's the only that is the cause, but that's not the only cause. We have seen many kinds of causes in this class, isn't it? So now what's the answer to all of this? The answer to all of this is this. And this is the most important part of this diagram that connects chapter 15 and 16. So pay attention. When you are in sattva, on the left is the only opportune moment to pivot into this. Can you see the screen? When you're in sattva, instead of cashing in on heavenly pleasures and getting back into this loop, you can pivot. Pivot because sattva is the only stage where knowledge can be received. Your antenna is high, your yoke is light, as Jesus would say, Christ would say, my yoke is light. Your burden, you're not carrying the world as much as you think you are in Rajas and Tamas. You have control, you have established intellect. To that extent, you're pure, you're divine. So at that time, sattva doesn't assure self-realization because you're still in ignorance. At that time is when you need to propel yourself through knowledge into self-realization. As we have seen in earlier chapters, it is knowledge that is the raft that helps you cross the river of ignorance to realization. When you are in sattva, ensuring you have a sangam, a sat sangam that is propelling you towards knowledge, ensuring your liberal knowledge that you've gathered through these classes. Why do we say gather liberal knowledge? Because you may be in Rajas now, it may not be helping you now. But when you're in Sattva, you don't have the luxury of starting then, sir. You will go back to Rajas. During Sattva, the knowledge you have gathered from these classes should propel you, should be a springboard for you to get into the truth. Otherwise, you go back to infinite birth after birth and death after death and projection after projection. Now, interestingly, on this side of realization, on the right side, there are many questions and no access to answers. Who created? I don't know. When did it begin? I don't know. What's the purpose? I don't know. I want to know. So what do? Let's create the second level of projection called God and say God created this. But with invitation to truth, when you realize the self, what is in this side of realization on the left, there are answers and no questions, because in and through all of this natak, you are and will be only the self. You realize the self alone is. The rope asks, when was I a snake? I was never a snake. The road says, when was I water? I was never the water. The mirror says, when was I hot? I was never hot. I was only reflecting Maya. So, when do you sense this urgency? The last animation on the slide is this, right on top. You don't have the luxury to make these changes too often, sir. The I, the conditioned consciousness, goes through various degrees of consciousness, various degrees of expression. When the mind is not illumined, you're in deep sleep state. You don't have access to change, growth mindset. You don't have an access to that. You don't have access to free will in your deep sleep. So forget about it. That's 1/3 of our lives. The I also comes through as partial consciousness in your dream states. We dream 30 times a night. In your dream state, your equipment is not subtle enough for you to exhibit free will and understand the truth. That forget about it. Another few hours gone. When we straddle through a fully conscious, when your ignorance, when your I is fully conscious, that's the waker state you and I are in now. That is that little small window we have to punch the right buttons, get into sattva, be detached to sattva, go into a path of seeking knowledge, and get out of this chain of misery, chain of bondage called samsara. And then we realize, in and through The truth alone, the self alone is the truth. It's the ignorance of the basic subtle fact that created all of this samsara. So, in chapter 16, to conclude, next time we'll read chapter 16. What Krishna is saying is, Arjuna, we have seen what the divine in you looks like. Let's see your equal propensity to exhibit the demon in you. And unless you come to Jesus with yourself, um, you cannot escape this rut of divine and demonic. Remember, both divine and demonic are equal traps, but divine helps you to pivot into the path of knowledge and get into self realization. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon and great week ahead. Reach out to me if you have anything. And I'm sorry I haven't responded to some of your emails yet. I hope to do so today. But keep learning, keep sharing.